You know how we constantly hear about innovation and creativity?
Mm.
It almost feels like these words are just glued together sometimes.
Hmm.
Or maybe that one is just like a fancier way of saying the other.
Yeah, people definitely use them interchangeably.
But I'm guessing you, like me, have that sort of nagging feeling that there's maybe a bit more to unpack there.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're aiming for today.
Good.
We've pulled together a really diverse set of research to try and get to the heart of this. We're looking at studies from educational psychology, organizational psychology, even engineering,
Okay.
and also how things like management, leadership, and even national systems play a role, particularly in innovation.
Yeah.
It's about seeing these concepts through, well, multiple lenses.
Right. So think of this maybe as your shortcut to a deeper understanding. Our goal isn't just to define these terms, like in a dictionary,
No, definitely not.
but to really explore their relationship.
Yeah.
You know, where they're similar, where they're strikingly different, how they support each other, and maybe those subtle distinctions that often get overlooked.
Exactly. Hopefully, by the end of this, everyone will have a much clearer picture of both.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's dive right into creativity first then. Where do we start?
Well, to get a solid foundation, I think it's helpful to look at where the word itself comes from. Creativity, it has roots in the Latin word creare,
Creo.
which means to make or produce, and it's also connected to crescere, which means something like to arise or grow.
Interesting. Make, grow.
But what's quite interesting is how recently creativity, the noun, actually entered our common vocabulary.
Really? It feels like such a fundamental concept. I would have guessed it was ancient.
Not quite, no. Our sources suggest that the word creativity only started appearing in written text in the late 19th century, around 1875.
Wow. Late 1800s.
And it wasn't formally included in standard English dictionaries until after World War II, think 1961.
That's surprising. But the verb create, that must be older.
Oh, yes, much older. The verb create goes way back to the 16th century. And back then, it was often used to kind of elevate artistic creation, almost giving it this sense of divine origin.
Ah, okay. That connects with those early ideas about creativity being like a gift, right?
Mm.
You know, like the ancient muses inspiring artists or something. So
Hmm.
the initial understanding was that it was something almost bestowed upon you.
Exactly. You had, for example, the romantic perspective, which really emphasized that inner muse, this almost instinctual drive. The artist was just sort of channeling something without conscious control.
Right.
But that's quite different from the rationalist view, which focused much more on the deliberate, conscious effort involved in the creative process.
Ah, such different ways of looking at the same thing. So, okay, fast forward to now. What's the more modern, generally accepted view?
Today, across various fields, there's actually a good deal of agreement. Creativity is generally seen as the generation of ideas or products that are crucially both original, meaning novel and new,
Okay, no.
and useful or appropriate. So, valuable, effective, meaningful, and importantly, judged as such by others. It's not just novelty for novelty's sake.
Judged by others. That's
Definitely.
interesting.
Yeah, that social validation aspect often comes up. And this definition aligns pretty well with principles in positive psychology, which looks at human strengths and flourishing.
Novelty and usefulness, right? Those two always seem to be at the heart of any discussion about creativity, don't they?
They really are the key components, the core consensus across fields. And, it's interesting to consider the 4C model, too.
The four C's, what's that?
It's a way to think about different levels or magnitudes of creativity. You've got little c, mini c, pro C, and big C.
Okay, break that down a bit.
Well, think of it as a spectrum. Little c is like everyday creativity, maybe finding a new route to work or uh, solving a small problem in a novel way. Mini c is more about the internal learning process, the insights you gain that are new to you.
Ah, okay. Like figuring something out for yourself.
Exactly. Then pro C is professional level creativity, the kind you see from experts in their field, like scientists, artists, engineers, who are making significant contributions.
Got it. And big C. That sounds like the major leagues.
That's right. Big C is the groundbreaking stuff. The world-changing creativity. Think Einstein, Marie Curie, Mozart, those kinds of transformative contributions.
Okay, that model makes sense. Like making a surprisingly tasty meal with leftovers that's maybe little c
Mm-hmm. Could be.
versus, I don't know, developing a revolutionary new vaccine, which is clearly way up the scale.
Exactly. But the source did mention that actually classifying something into these categories isn't always straightforward.
Yeah, I can imagine. Where do you draw the lines?
Precisely. Just like trying to rigidly define something like genius, setting absolute strict criteria for each of these C levels can be quite challenging in practice. It's a helpful framework for thinking, but applying it definitively, not always easy.
Makes sense. Okay, so that gives us a good handle on creativity. Now
Yeah.
let's turn our attention to innovation.
Right.
How does that differ from all this talk about making and producing ideas?
So, innovation is generally defined as the intentional introduction and application of new ideas, processes, or procedures.
Intentional introduction and application.
Yes,
Yeah.
application is key. And it has to result in benefits for the adopting unit. That could be an individual, a team, an organization, or even, society as a whole.
Benefits. So there's an outcome focus.
Definitely. And what's particularly noteworthy, I think, is its close tie to entrepreneurship.
Ah, right. How do those two link up specifically?
Well, entrepreneurship is often seen as taking those new ideas, the kind of raw materials from creativity, and actually bringing them to fruition to create value.
Okay, making it real.
Exactly. It involves not just that initial spark, but also what creativity researchers sometimes call problem finding. Identifying unmet needs or opportunities, and then ensuring that the solution, the new idea, is actually appropriate, that it addresses those needs and generates real value. Innovation is considered pretty essential for launching new ventures and developing successful new products.
So innovation feels much more about the execution, the making it happen part, maybe.
That's a really crucial distinction, yes. And it leads us nicely to understanding the difference between innovation and invention.
Oh yeah, those get confused too.
They do. While an invention can certainly be a component of an innovation, they aren't the same thing. Invention and discovery are actually pretty closely related. Both can arise from investigation, right?
Okay.
But true invention, in this context, seems to require genuine and global novelty, what some call historical creativity. It has to be new to the world.
So if I independently come up with, say, the light bulb today, but obviously Edison beat me to it, that's not invention.
In that historical global sense, no. That would be more like personal creativity, maybe Minishi rediscovering something for yourself.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be considered an invention in that significant world-first way.
Got it. New to the world.
Exactly. And a really key point about innovation is that it demands action beyond just generating the idea.
Action.
Yes, one of our sources even playfully refers to creativity as a kind of group activity within innovation. It involves translating the idea into a practical form. It involves persuading others of its value and then, crucially, actually implementing it in a formal, structured way.
Right. Convincing people, getting it adopted, making it stick.
That's the core of innovation.
Okay, so we're definitely starting to see where they branch off, but let's talk about where they meet. Where do creativity and innovation actually overlap and support each other?
Yeah, despite their distinct characteristics, they are fundamentally intertwined. You can't really separate them completely. The most obvious overlap is that both have their genesis, their starting point, in the generation of new ideas.
Right. Got to have an idea first.
Exactly. Creativity is really the wellspring,
Wow.
the source of those novel concepts that can eventually be transformed into innovations. You simply can't have innovation without that initial creative spark.
That makes perfect sense. Creativity sort of lays the groundwork, the foundation for innovation to build upon.
Precisely put. And another similarity is that both concepts can be examined at various levels. We can study creativity and innovation in individuals, within teams, across entire organizations, and even at a national or, multi-level perspective.
Okay. And what about the thinking processes involved? Are they similar?
There's definite overlap there, too. Many of the underlying cognitive skills are relevant to both. Think about analogical thinking, drawing connections between seemingly unrelated things,
Yeah.
or the ability to retrieve information from memory and then restructure it, combine different ideas in novel ways, use mental imagery. These sorts of mental tools are valuable whether you're brainstorming a new ad campaign or figuring out the logistics for a new process.
Right. Those mental gymnastics apply to both getting the idea and making it work.
Yeah.
What about those moments of sudden insight? The aha moments. Do they play a role in both?
They certainly do. Unconscious processes like incubation, where you let a problem sort of simmer in the back of your mind.
Stepping away from it.
Right. And illumination, that feeling of sudden insight or the aha moment, these are definitely seen as integral to the creative process. And those insights can absolutely be the seeds of innovation.
Okay.
However, it's important to note, as our sources suggest, that these insights rarely just appear out of thin air. They typically emerge after a period of conscious work and are built upon your existing knowledge base. It's not magic.
So even those flashes of brilliance usually have a foundation of, well, effort and knowledge behind them. They don't just pop out of nowhere.
Exactly. It's probably more of a gradual emergence that feels sudden rather than a truly instantaneous miracle.
Right. Okay. Now let's really try to dig into the core differences and nuances between creativity and innovation. We've touched on some, but maybe we can make these distinctions crystal clear.
Let's do it.
I'm ready. What are the absolute key separating factors?
Okay. I think the fundamental difference really boils down to their primary focus. Creativity is centrally concerned with the generation of new ideas. Idea generation.
Generation. Got it.
Innovation, in contrast, is focused on the implementation and application of those ideas in a way that generates value.
Implementation and application for value.
Okay, so you can have incredibly creative ideas that, for whatever reason, lack of resources, bad timing, whatever, never actually translate into real-world innovations.
Right. So that brilliant idea you have in the shower that, never sees the light of day. That's pure creativity, but it's lacking the innovation aspect.
Precisely. That's a perfect example. Another key difference lies in the intended outcome.
Outcome. How so?
Well, creativity results in novel and useful ideas or products, conceptually or maybe as prototypes. Innovation, however, results in the adoption and widespread use of something new and beneficial. It's about the impact, the uptake, the positive change it brings about.
Adoption. So it has to actually be used by others.
That's generally the marker for innovation, yes.
And what about the number of people involved? You touch on this, but is creativity more often a solitary activity while innovation usually requires a team?
That's a very common pattern. While the initial creative spark can certainly originate from an individual or maybe a small group, innovation almost invariably requires collaboration. Think about it. You need a diverse range of skills, perspectives, resources to take an idea and successfully implement it in the real world. It's rarely a solo undertaking.
That makes sense. You need designers, engineers, marketers, finance people, maybe all sorts of different expertise to move an idea from concept to reality.
Absolutely. And that leads directly to another crucial point, the inherently action-oriented nature of innovation.
Right, you keep coming back to action.
Because it's central. Innovation inherently involves taking action, translating the abstract idea into something tangible, and then implementing it effectively. Creativity, on the other hand, can happily remain at the conceptual stage, A brilliant notion that never progresses beyond being just that, a notion.
Okay. And you also mentioned value creation. For many innovations, isn't the ultimate goal often tied to commercial success or market value?
Exactly. Innovation often places a strong emphasis on the creation of tangible value, and very frequently on achieving market success. It's often linked directly to entrepreneurial endeavors and the commercialization of new ideas.
Whereas creativity doesn't necessarily have that burden.
Right. A creative idea might have immense intrinsic value or artistic value or intellectual value. But the value of an innovation is often judged much more pragmatically by its impact, its rate of adoption, its economic return, its societal benefit.
So, given these differences, how do we even go about measuring something like creativity versus innovation? It sounds like you'd need completely different approaches.
You really do. They require different tools. Creativity is often assessed through things like divergent thinking tasks.
Divergent thinking, like brainstorming tests.
Sort of, yeah. Exercises designed to see how many different and original ideas someone can generate in response to a prompt, like how many uses can you think of for a brick?
Okay.
Researchers also look at personality traits commonly associated with creativity, like openness to experience, and they evaluate the actual creative outputs based on novelty and usefulness criteria.
And innovation, how's that measured?
That's usually much more about outcomes. It's typically measured by metrics like the rate at which a new product or process is adopted, the overall impact it has on an organization, on society, and often its financial success or return on investment. Much more concrete, typically.
Okay, so they're definitely distinct, but it's also really clear they're deeply connected. Let's talk more about how exactly they complement each other. It sounds like a partnership.
It's a truly symbiotic relationship, really. They need each other. Creativity provides the absolutely essential raw material for innovation, those novel and potentially valuable ideas.
The fuel.
Exactly. Without a continuous flow of fresh thinking, the well of innovation would eventually run dry. You'd just be optimizing existing things.
And innovation then gives those creative ideas a purpose.
Yeah.
Like a pathway to actually making a tangible difference in the world.
Perfectly said. Innovation provides the necessary context and application for creative outputs, giving them that real-world impact. Think about, I don't know, a groundbreaking scientific discovery, a truly creative achievement.
Hmm.
It only really becomes an innovation when it's translated into, say, a new technology or a medical treatment or some other practical application that actually benefits people.
So the discovery is creativity, the new drug is innovation.
Broadly speaking, yes. And it's important to remember it's not usually a one-off event, is it? Innovation likely requires ongoing creativity throughout the implementation process.
Ah, good point. Yeah. It's not just idea then execution, full stop.
Absolutely not. Effective innovation often demands continuous creativity all the way through. You'll inevitably hit roadblocks. You'll encounter unforeseen challenges.
Yeah.
You'll need to refine the initial idea, maybe pivot, develop new solutions on the fly. So that creative problem solving is needed throughout the innovation journey. It's not just about that initial spark.
That makes me wonder about leadership then. Do different styles of leadership tend to foster creativity better versus innovation? Or do you need both?
That's a really insightful question. And yes, our sources do shed some light on this. For instance, some research suggests that transformational leadership.
Transformational, the inspiring, visionary kind.
Right. That style, which focuses on inspiring and intellectually stimulating individuals, might be particularly effective in fostering the initial idea generation phase, the creative part. On the other hand, transactional leadership, which is more about structure, clear expectations, managing performance, rewards, and punishments, that might be more beneficial for the implementation and execution phases, the innovation part.
Fascinating. So you might actually need different leadership approaches at different stages of that whole journey, from creative concept to successful innovation.
Precisely. It suggests a need for flexibility, doesn't it? And some studies even indicate that other styles, like participative leadership getting input from the team, or even directive leadership providing clear vision and guidance, can both positively influence team innovation, but it depends heavily on the specific context and the stage of the process.
So it's complex.
It really underscores the diverse needs at different points. There's no single best style for the entire process.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit now. We've talked definitions, differences, connections. What are the key factors that influence creativity and innovation at different levels, like starting with the individual?
Okay, yeah. At the individual level, a huge driver, particularly for creativity, seems to be intrinsic motivation.
Intrinsic.
Yeah.
Doing it because you love it.
Exactly. That internal drive, the passion for the work itself, that's a powerful engine. Interestingly, though, extrinsic rewards like money, bonuses aren't always bad for creativity.
Oh, I thought the common wisdom was that they kill creativity.
It's more nuanced. They can sometimes undermine it, but under specific conditions, they might even enhance it. For example, if the reward confirms someone's competence or provides useful feedback or information, it might not hurt and could possibly help.
Interesting nuance. What else at the individual level?
Personality traits definitely play a role. We mentioned openness to experience earlier, that's consistently linked to higher creativity. Things like goal orientation, how individuals see themselves, their self-concept also seem to be important factors.
Okay. What about when you move up to the level of teams? What makes a team creative or innovative?
Within teams, factors like team learning behavior are really important.
Team learning.
Yeah, the ability of the team as a whole to reflect, learn from mistakes, adapt strategies, that kind of thing. And also the presence of shared mental models.
Shared mental models, meaning everyone's on the same page.
Essentially, yes. Team members having a common understanding of the task, the goals, who does what, how to approach the work. That shared understanding facilitates coordination and can boost both creativity and innovation. And again, leadership style within the team comes into play, as we just discussed.
All right. And then at the organizational level, what kind of company environment really nurtures creativity and innovation?
Organizational climate is absolutely crucial here. Things like psychological safety are huge.
Psychological safety, feeling safe to speak up.
Exactly. The feeling that it's okay to take risks, to voice unconventional ideas, even to fail sometimes without fear of being punished or humiliated, that's vital. Also, just a general culture that genuinely supports and encourages new ideas.
Support and resources.
Definitely. Having access to the necessary resources, time, funding, information, and leadership that actively champions both creativity and innovation are essential. It's also worth noting, our sources point out that just imposing top-down policies related to innovation without getting real buy-in from employees can actually backfire and hinder things.
Right. People need to feel involved.
Yeah. And interestingly, universities are often highlighted as environments that are particularly good at fostering both creativity and innovation, perhaps due to the focus on knowledge generation, exploration, and often collaboration.
That makes sense. They're often hubs of new thinking. Okay, finally, let's go really big picture. At the national level, what distinguishes more innovative countries from less innovative ones?
At that national scale, the concept of a national innovation system becomes really key.
National Innovation System. What does that include?
It encompasses a whole range of factors. Things like government policies that support research and development, the quality of the country's infrastructure, digital, physical, and crucially, the strength and nature of the interactions between universities, industry, and government agencies. This triple helix interaction is seen as vital. These interconnected elements all play a significant role in fostering innovation across the economy and ultimately determining a nation's competitiveness.
Wow, okay. So it's a whole ecosystem.
Exactly. It's not just about individual bright sparks.
We've covered a lot of ground. But, in any field of study like this, there are always ongoing debates and different perspectives, aren't there? What are some of the current discussions or maybe controversies surrounding creativity and innovation?
Oh, definitely. One enduring debate, especially in creativity research, revolves around the nature of insight. Is it really that sudden, almost magical aha moment we talked about?
Yeah, the light bulb moment.
Or is it actually a more gradual, protracted process, something that builds incrementally on existing knowledge and prior work, maybe below the level of consciousness for a while?
So sudden flash versus slow burn.
Kind of, yeah. And the growing body of evidence seems to increasingly support the latter view, that those seemingly sudden insights are often the culmination of a significant amount of prior conscious and unconscious processing. They feel sudden, but the groundwork was laid.
Interesting. So maybe less magic, more mental mechanics. What about those creativity techniques we often hear about? Like brainstorming is the classic one. Are they actually as effective as people often believe?
Ah, brainstorming. Yes, it's certainly widely known and used, but the research on its effectiveness is, well, mixed. Some studies actually suggest that individual brainstorming people generating ideas alone first can sometimes be more productive, at least in terms of the sheer quantity of novel ideas generated compared to traditional group brainstorming.
Really? Why is that? Fear of judgment in a group.
That's one factor, evaluation apprehension. Another is production blocking, having to wait your turn to speak, which can interrupt your own train of thought. The role of a facilitator in group brainstorming is also complex and debated. So while popular, its effectiveness isn't guaranteed and depends a lot on how it's run.
Good to know. Are there other big debates?
Well, another area that gets discussed is the influence of culture. How culture might shape the way creativity and inventiveness are perceived and valued.
Oh, right. Like different cultures might prioritize different things.
Exactly. Some research points to perhaps a tendency in some Western cultures to place a strong emphasis on individualism, radical novelty, breaking away from tradition.
Okay.
Whereas some Eastern cultural perspectives might place a greater emphasis, relatively speaking, on conformity, collective effort, and building upon existing knowledge or adapting things incrementally.
So originality versus improvement, maybe?
That's one way to frame it, yeah. But these are, of course, very broad generalizations, and there's huge variation within any culture. But it highlights the important point that creativity isn't necessarily a universally defined and valued concept in exactly the same way across all cultures.
That's a really important nuance.
Yeah.
Okay, this has truly been a deep dive into the fascinating world of creativity and innovation. If we were to try and summarize everything we've talked about, the core similarities, the key differences, the ways they complement each other, what would be the main takeaway?
I think the central distinction, as we've explored quite a bit, is that creativity is primarily about the generation of new and useful ideas, thinking them up.
Right. The idea part.
The innovation, on the other hand, is fundamentally about the deliberate implementation and application of those ideas to create tangible value or benefit.
Making them happen and making them useful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So while creativity is absolutely the indispensable starting point, the seed, it doesn't automatically translate into innovation. Innovation requires that subsequent action. It usually needs collaboration among various people or groups, and it has that clear focus on delivering real benefits, on being adopted.
So that initial aha moment, that spark of a creative idea, is really just the beginning of the journey, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just the first step, often.
You need that subsequent effort, the hard work, the collaboration, the strategic thinking, the resources, all that stuff. to transform that initial spark into a real-world innovation that actually makes a difference.
Precisely. Generating brilliant ideas, the creativity part, is only one part of the equation. Bringing those ideas to life, making them beneficial, getting them out there, that's where the crucial and often challenging role of innovation comes in. It involves a different set of skills, a different mindset, sometimes different processes, and often the contributions of a much wider range of people.
Yeah. It really makes you think differently about the whole process and maybe about the environments that best support both of these vital things. They need different kinds of nurturing, perhaps.
It might.
So for you, our listener, maybe something to ponder is this. Think about the various contexts you're a part of, your personal life, your work, your community, maybe even society more broadly. What do you think really helps foster that initial spark of creativity? What conditions allow new ideas to emerge?
And then on the flip side,
Right. And then what elements are most crucial for fueling that often difficult, sometimes messy journey of innovation? What does it take to get those ideas off the drawing board and into the real world where they can have an impact? Are there perhaps small changes, even tiny ones, that you could implement in your own sphere of influence to encourage both?
it's definitely something worth reflecting on.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive today. Lots to think about.